Hello, welcome back to Association Transformation, your weekly nonprofit association focused conversation, international at that, aimed at the best and in some cases the worst that the nonprofit world has to offer. But we're here to learn, we're here to gather experience, we're here to help amplify solutions and rise up those innovations that we see in the industry and share them with all of our association friends. And today's a fun one. Andrew and I have decided to take this on, just the two of us. In some ways, it's it's the story of our lives, but we want to, or the story of Andrew's life.
Well, it's my autobiography title. I think we're going to go for it. It's my autobiography. Yeah.
So today we've penned into the editorial schedule. We had penned in a culture of failure. Learning through experimentation. And if these last 12 months have not shown us anything, it's that none of us can predict the future. None of us can fully plan for it all. And we have to be willing to fail, pick ourselves up, learn from those experiences in order to adapt, in order to survive. And I think there's a lot in the nonprofit space that to be learned from, and of course, all of Andrew's years and years of failure that we can all.
Thank you. Yes, it is Consort Strategy's mission statement as well, I think. How dare you? How are you, Lisa? How are you, Lisa?
Fabulous. I am fabulous. No, I mean, there's humility in all of our life stories, in the stories of all of the associations we've ever been a part of. There's no perfect association. There's no perfect association executive, and there's no perfect board. And I think if we pretend there is, then we're blind and we're missing a huge learning opportunity.
Yeah, we are. I mean, I get it though. I think I spend a lot of time talking with people about the kind of cultural safety net that they need within within the board space or within the team environment. And I understand why there's a reluctance sometimes for us to talk about failure or to publicize our failures, if you like, because you look at my LinkedIn profile, you look at your LinkedIn profile, with the most amazing consultants you can imagine. You would be foolish not to give us work because our whole careers are predicated on this story of success.
I thought you were going to complain about your 5 friends and my 5,000
no,
friends.
not that, not that.
Okay,
yes,
good.
all right, yes. Every time we tweet the same thing, you get 70,000 likes, and I get 2. Like literally 2.
And one is me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and no, my point is, our whole CVs are predicated on this statement of success. Why would you not want to work with me? I've done all these amazing things. You don't look at someone's LinkedIn profile or their Instagram or their Twitter feed or whatever and say, "Oh my God, well, look at that walking disaster." And yet, I know that the mistakes I have made, professionally, because we are just talking professionally.
Let's keep it. We only have a certain amount of time.
Exactly. Yeah, we've only got 20 minutes. That's right. As it's a cliche, but they are far more valuable to me and the work I do now than most of the successes I've had. In my career.
This culture that you talk about, have we not made any progress? I mean, has the last 12 months not given greater permission for both professionals, individuals and organizations to demonstrate vulnerability and to say, hey, we aren't sure what to do. We're struggling with you. We're figuring it out as we go along. We're taking risks. It may not work. Hasn't that improved substantially in the last year?
I think it did. I think it did to begin with. I think certainly in the first few months of lockdown and pandemic, I did see, and I think we both witnessed that in the human element, if you like, the humanity within the workplace, and certainly a lot of empathy and a lot of trust. Yeah, a lot of trust. We were literally opening up. I mean, you and I both work from home anyway, so we have office environments, but I think there was definitely you were being opened up into people's homes, when you were zooming with them and chatting with them, and and it was great. But what I think we've seen, my view is actually I'm seeing a regression recently of um, of the way people are trusting or otherwise of each other. I don't know what it is. It's
Really?
difficult.
Who
Yeah, it's
are your
difficult.
friends?
No, I'm not saying that we're
Oh,
talking
wait, that's right.
professional here now. Yeah. Well, no. I mean, I read an article the other day. I forget where it was, but I think it was in Canada. Maybe it was Australia. I don't know. Anyway, it was some somebody was being a member of the board was being called to resign because they had it was like they were having a meeting, 5:30 in the evening. They had a glass of red wine in front of them while they were having this Zoom meeting, and a chap on the other one of the chaps on the other end of the Zoom call was disgusted and thought it was appalling and was demanding that this person resign from the board
Well,
because
I mean,
that was such
first lesson
inappropriate
learned.
behavior. You know,
First lesson learned, you put your alcohol in a coffee mug.
absolutely.
That's first lesson learned.
Do you think I drink this much caffeine? My
And
God,
if
yeah,
and
you
if
know.
you're drinking in the morning, you blow on it so people think it's
That's
coffee.
right. That's right.
Come on, people, come on, people. But no, I hear what you're saying, and I think what you're talking about is, I don't know, people just being judgmental and mean
And but then
versus
that and but that judgment and that meanness undermines then a willingness to be trusted, doesn't it?
true. That you're
Yeah.
right. That puts up barriers to
Yeah.
humility, to transparency, to a willingness to admit mistakes. I do something with some of my clients. We do, organizational 360s, and the conversations aren't all, sugar and puppies and sunshine. It's, what did we do wrong? What can we, you learn so much more from what's not working. What should we stop doing? Where should we, step away from? And those conversations are always so much more valuable. Sometimes you need to give people anonymity in order to have those conversations at the organizational level, but sometimes you have to push them, and if you give them a safe space to do it. And I think what you're saying is that safe space is getting smaller and smaller, or
Yeah.
is disappearing,
Yeah.
as people come out of what was the most disruptive time in the last 100 years.
Yeah, absolutely. In multiple generations, yeah, it's significant. All of us were deeply have been all been deeply affected by the last year, and yeah, but it feels and it for me, having those kind of culture of and we I think you probably spend a lot you probably reference Lencioni's um dysfunctions of a team and how he talks about vulnerability based trust, and I spend a lot of time referencing that. I use it. It really resonates with me. I really like it, and I'm a person who has no. I don't really have much trouble admitting these days. I used to, but these days I don't have much problem putting myself out and saying I haven't got a clue what's going on. Can someone help me, please? And but I worry that culturally we kind of we went into this world of, oh, we're all in this together. We're all gonna make our help each other through it. And I worry that we're regressing back to that to cultural norms that actually I don't like. Cultural
Yeah,
norms
well,
that undermine strategic planning and
yeah.
organizational effectiveness.
Right. Well, and that, that rigidity
Yeah.
that I think you're referencing, I mean,
Mm.
that's a dangerous direction to be moving in, because we're talking
Yes.
about two different things. I mean, a culture of failure in itself is simply one in which you're willing to admit your mistakes
Yes.
and
Exactly.
learn from them. And the other end of that spectrum, which takes quite a bit of self-awareness and courage, is then to learn through experimentation. That is the ultimate, I think, evolution of a culture of failure, is one in which you can experiment without the fear of failure. You can take risks because you know they're the right thing to do, whether
Yeah.
they work out or not.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a culture of failure at its purest.
But why do people? Why? Why would they? Oh, I mean, I don't know how I'm going to phrase this. Why would they not want to do that? Why would they? Why would an organization not want to engage in a culture of failure?
Well, for the exact reasons that you just specified. I mean, you have board members who are sitting there with some arbitrary measures of success, or who use status quo as the determinant of leadership and achievement. That culture where judgment and maybe it is the definition of success. I think a lot of organizations, between a mission and a vision, they fail to define what success looks like.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
do you think in an association space, in the membership space, do you think that, I mean, we've spoken before about, the sense of ownership that permeates, for obvious reasons, throughout a membership entity. Do you think sometimes that, um, the culture of failure is prohibited because people don't necessarily feel they're allowed to risk the organization's reputation, its money, its resources, you know
I think a lot of this has to do with executive confidence. We had Jamie Pratt on a few episodes ago, and she works in the association space on executive leadership and executive search, and how many executives are retiring early or not sticking through the pandemic. They just want to get
yeah
out, and boards who think they want these magical change agents who are going to innovate and push and experiment, when in reality they don't really have the stomach for that.
yeah
But I think this comes down to executive confidence. Do you have the
mm,
confidence to stand in front of your board and say, we messed up, we miscalibrated, we miscalculated, and a mistake was made? And are they the type of leaders sitting around that board table who are going to respond in a way that makes that learning experience, that failure, if you want to call it that learning experience, okay? And are they going to ask you, well, why did is it going to become a punitive reaction, or is it going to become one in which we can learn and evolve and make better decisions?
sadly, I think, well, from my
Are
own
you trying to say I'm
personal
right? Wait, were you stumbling through just saying you agree? You could just stop right there if you want to
Right.
say you
Do you
agree.
know what? If you make this joke all the time, right, and it's not funny anymore, okay? I'm not laughing anymore, okay?
Don't get your
Right?
panties in a bunch. Gosh, you're
What?
so
What?
sensitive.
What? Well, yeah. 21st century metrosexual. Get over it, okay? Whatever. Yeah. Um. So I think,
I think
sadly, I
you
was going to
have to
say,
have combed your hair to be
oh
metrosexual.
look,
I think you
I'm
actually
also
have had to
suffering.
have.
How dare you? Right? Oh my God! I can't believe this. Trying to make a really valid point, and all you're doing is
Okay,
mocking me.
I'm sorry.
Right, dear listener, right, I haven't had a haircut since the week before Christmas. It's now almost March. The barbers are not opening in the UK
Okay,
until
okay, I
April the
understand.
12th. Right, I got
You're right.
another 8 weeks of this.
I
Right,
appreciate your vulnerability, and I am sorry for
yeah.
not fully
See what I did
appreciating
there?
the
See what I
circumstances.
put
I
it?
know.
I did there, putting myself out there, and you're just mocking me. Yeah, this is like a real life example of why I wouldn't want to put myself out there to a board as an executive, and I have done. And sadly, when I've done it, the response has been punitive. The response has been, stop laughing.
Right.
We're having a serious conversation.
I'm ready.
The response has been punitive, unfortunately, because they've just not had that sophisticated appreciation of actually, the value of failure. Um, they've only valued it in financial terms
Well, and
or reputational terms.
imagine if you don't have an employment contract and you're
Yeah,
an
yeah,
association executive standing up in front of that room trying to demonstrate the value of experimentation, and that you've pursued a course that wasn't a sure thing because it was, the opportunity that existed at the time. I think this is a question for boards. I work with a lot of boards and help them vision what their needs are from their executive, whether it's during the time of hiring the next executive or as a preliminary step to strategic planning. What is that relationship between the executive and the board? Is there mutual respect? Is there trust? Is it a safe place for each
yeah,
to be vulnerable and to
yeah.
share their true feelings, or are they just going up there speaking from the talking points they think are expected of them? And that eliminates the opportunity for learning from failure and experimentation.
But do you do the same in reverse? do you sit down and get the chief exec or the exec director to explain their expectations of the board?
Yes, that
Because
comes in less
why?
of a formal sit down, because it's part of
Why?
our it's part of our conversation in general of what's working, what's the culture of the organization, what's the leadership culture. Maybe it should be more
Well, because
intentional.
I think it should be more intentional because I think the reality is the board and the CEO or the exec director are two sides of the same leadership coin. I don't buy into this hierarchical nonsense that the board is somehow over the chief executive. They fulfill in different roles, but roles that ultimately have to complement each other for the organization to be successful. And so I think it's absolutely right that you should ask the board to explain their expectations of the executive. Absolutely. But if we're really to utilize the board to its full potential, we should be asking the executive exactly the same question. And those directors, the board, the NEDs, the non-exec directs, they need to understand what the executive expects of them. Otherwise, it always is this self-fulfilling prophecy of a one-way relationship. What we and that does not, and then you end up in the scenarios where I know we've both been, where it is almost some kind of servile I will report to the board. And yes, we absolutely need to have reporting. Of course we do. We need schemes of delegation and checks and balances. Absolutely. Because yes, the board is also the legally accountable entity. Absolutely. There needs to be that. That needs to be understood. But I think for true organizational culture to exist and to flourish, and for a culture of acceptable failure, I think we need to be treating the board and the exec in the same way because
I
they are of the same. Sorry, go on. Go
No,
on.
I appreciate that. That gives me pause and makes me want to make more intentional that question that I pose to the executive about the board and not just the other direction. Because in itself, it sets a tone
Yeah,
when you handle it one way with the board and not the
it
same
does.
way
It
with the
does.
executive.
And the
But
chair and the chief executive are partners. Again, I don't buy
right,
into this. The
ideally,
chair,
yes.
yeah, absolutely. I know you know that, but I mean, I often explain that the chair is not the chief executive's line manager. You don't get to be chief executive and need to have a line manager. The chair and the chief exec are partners, and it should be a massively creative and trusting. Going back to that trust piece, partnership where they support one another. Because again, you can't be the chair of the board and expect me, I can't be the chair of the board and expect me to be vulnerable and to be trusted to put myself out there as the chair if quite frankly I feel like you're all looking at me and you're all against me, including you, Mr. or Mrs. Chief Executive.
Right.
So I think the whole piece for me is entirely holistic. Otherwise, the cultural piece just won't ever work.
No, I mean, holistic, that's a great word. It is holistic in the absence and in the presence. You'll see it in those organizations where it's there because it lives, it's threaded throughout. And I think of most relationships, I think we could call this a relationship between the executive and the board. It
Definitely.
needs to be one. They're not perfect. They're somewhere in the middle. They maybe
Yeah.
trend towards the less than perfect. And in those circumstances, how do you initiate a culture of failure? Do you have to pull back the curtain more frequently and with more detail? Do you have to take some of the board's ideas and put them into practice, even though you know they aren't going to work, so they can experience failure and you can demonstrate how to learn from that and recalibrate? Can you take measured mistakes and turn them into a positive to lay the groundwork for that culture that you want to have? I mean, let's be realistic. How do you make this work if you're starting from an imperfect relationship and you want to establish and create a culture of failure and you want to be able to start experimenting irrespective of the outcome?
I mean, it takes a step, doesn't it? It takes individuals, because I think, let's not talk about the board. It's not some ethereal entity that exists out there. It's people. That's all it is. It's just people, and we're all under the exec. We're just people, and all this is about is just trying to understand how we can work together and be honest with one another, and there not be a fear of repercussions or reprisal or whatever else, and so I understand that it is very much about being willing to take that step as an individual and say, okay, I'm going to put myself out there. I like what you're saying, actually. Do we
What?
plan? Do we? Sorry, scrub that, producer. Scrub that. I did not say that, right? Yeah, you're gonna have that as your ringtone, aren't you, from now on your mobile?
Yes.
Yeah, you'll be like, yeah. No, I do like what you're saying. I like most of what you say, apart from when you disagree with me. I like, what you're saying. How do we plan to fail, as it were? I mean, you don't want to consciously go out there, and I don't necessarily agree that we should adopt something that the board is suggesting, knowing that it's going to fail, but we just have to create an example of it. I'm not sure that's the most productive way of doing it.
No, and I'm not suggesting that either, but there's a
But
way to undertake things that you know are a
yes,
risk and to set them up in a way and inform the board along the way
yes,
so that
yes,
they're vested.
yes.
They need to be vested in these experiments, and they need to know that you are, this is their organization, and it's being
But
driven. Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, no, go on. I don't want to interrupt you, but I did interrupt you. Go on.
Well, here you go.
Finish what you were saying? Finish what you were saying.
I lost it. Go ahead.
Ah, well, it was
You
probably
ruined it. You
the
ruined
most
it.
profound thing you were going to say all afternoon. I was just going to say,
Wow.
this is all part of the risk matrix, if you like, the risk management framework. And one of the things I find a lot of the time, people aren't willing to embrace failure or accept failure if they haven't at first of all agreed their shared understanding of what constitutes risk. Because
And what
sometimes,
success is. I
well,
mean,
yeah, absolutely,
we talk about the
absolutely,
definition of success a couple of times now, and I think back to one of our most popular podcasts from 2020 was our new CEOs
yeah,
coming together.
yeah,
We had a
mm-hmm,
panel of new
mm-hmm,
CEOs who in both cases had filled the shoes of a long tenured previous
yeah,
executive.
yeah,
And I think about those new execs who come to the table and they want to have new ideas. They want to innovate. They want to experiment. And yet the status quo is this, heavy burden that they wear. And where do you find this, to your point, where do you create trust? When is it right to take risk? How do you define risk? And what is success? What does
yeah,
success
yeah,
look
absolutely,
like? Because if you aren't
absolutely.
agreeing on
Because
that, then you're
well,
all shooting
absolutely.
in different directions anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, how I, I mean, I'm okay. I'm far more comfortable with risk than arguably, do you know what? Than I think you are. We do a lot of work together, and I think sometimes I'm more
Wow.
willing to be. I think I am. But you know what? But actually, we've never had that conversation, and
We
we should.
haven't. We haven't
We should
defined
sit down
success
and say,
together.
well, I don't need to. The fact that we sit down here every week and spend 20 futile minutes, no, profitable minutes with each other,
Andrew.
is my definition of success. No, but seriously, I think you're right. What does it? Is it monetary? Is it reputational? Is it growth? Is it diversity? Is it more stuff? Is it influence?
Right.
How do we measure this?
No,
You're absolutely
this
right.
is
And
a
these
microcosm. You're
conversations,
right. This is
yeah,
a microcosm.
yeah,
Are we willing to share our mistakes with each other? Are we willing to be vulnerable and weak around each other? Are we willing to brainstorm and not necessarily have the right answer and work
yeah,
our way through what innovation
yeah,
and experimentation might look like?
yeah,
And who is going to, who takes the lead on this? The
yeah.
board, the executive? I mean, if this is, if you're each leading, if you're dance
Well,
partners and both are
absolutely.
trying to
So,
lead, then maybe you don't go anywhere.
yeah. Well, I think you need to. I think if you're working in a culture, in an environment where you are struggling with basic, communications around who does what, who takes the lead on this, uh, and therefore we can't necessarily between ourselves articulate our measures of our appetite for risk and our measures for success. If we, I would argue, you really do need to bring in a specialist, like you. This
Maybe
is
we
your
need like
this is your chance
maybe.
to say like. Oh no, Andrew,
Oh,
like
thank you,
you. No, you
Andrew.
mean like
No,
you,
oh,
Andrew.
I mean like you, Andrew. Just like
Ah,
you.
too little, too late. But no, seriously, I think you bringing in. Look, anybody who's independent of it, who can be objective in their
Well,
assessment of
and
where you're at.
has high emotional intelligence.
Absolutely,
This is organizational emotional
yeah,
intelligence. And I'm
absolutely.
maybe we should I don't know if we need to go to co-host couples therapy or if we need to create an association red table.
Ooh,
What if we did an
co-host
association red
couples
table?
therapy. Oh, see,
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, red table. What's
Do you
that?
know what the red table is? Jada
No,
Pinkett Smith? Oh, okay. All right. That's your
no, I don't
homework
know what
until
that
next
is.
time.
Okay, all right,
Go watch
okay.
the red
I know
table.
what marriage counselling is, and I'm divorced twice, so let's not do that. Okay,
All
let's.
right. So we're learning.
I'm not
Are you
necessarily
learning from
successful. Eh?
So you're learning from failures. We'll get back to that at a future episode. But I'm really glad we touched on this. I think it's actually something important to
Yes,
revisit
I do.
because I don't want failure and experimentation and vulnerability to just be a COVID thing. I
Oh
think it's
God, no, no.
so we have to help associations make it part of their organizational infrastructure, and it's their only
Yeah,
way to evolve. I'm glad we did this. Thanks for joining me again this week and not being
always,
too annoying.
always, always.
I do have that
Okay.
one sound bit of you agreeing with me, so I'll take that and. But we hope everyone's enjoyed the podcast, and whether it's experimentation, whether it's learning from failure or board relationships, let us know what topics you would like us to tackle next time. You can tweet us at Association Transformation or email us at hello@yourconsort.com. And we look to you. Our audience are, I don't know, could I call them fans? Who knows? I mean, all three of them.
Oh, listeners, just call them listeners. Let's not
Listeners.
over egg the
Okay.
pudding, is it? Let's not over egg it, right?
Well, either way, we are now at every podcast platform, so you can find us wherever you find your podcasts. Make us one of your favorites. We invite you back next time, and until then, stay well and put your members and your mission first.
Association Transformation is brought to you in partnership between Consult Strategy and Brewer Pratt Solutions in support of the Institute of Association Leadership.